Welcome to Uncaged. Today we're speaking with Larry Drake. We're going to be
Good.
speaking a lot about leadership today and really helping people become leaders, become future leaders, help shape our world for the better. Larry is an expert in this space. He is the president and chief executive officer of the newly branded Leading for Life. And so we'll talk about that history, that organization, where it's come from and where it's going. But before we get into the Leading for Life story, Larry, tell us a little bit about you and your background.
Well, this is always a difficult question, and for me because I hate talking about myself, but you've posed the question, so I'll give it a whirl. My career has taken enormously interesting turns, and I say interesting because none of which I would have expected of what I've been able to do and participate in and be a part of as a homeless kid back when I was 16 years old. As I look at my life today, I've lived or worked in about 60 countries around the world. I've been a corporate executive, an entrepreneur, an author, a scholar, and a university president and a university dean. Did I expect any of those things to happen? So my career has been storied in terms of my family, because I don't think anyone in my family um, thought that I could do this except a couple of people, and one being my grandmother, who was one of 20 kids who thought I could do anything. She was one of those people that encouraged me to go to college, which I had no interest in,
Mhm.
uh, and encouraged me to do things that, you know, I didn't really want to do, but in reference to her and in deference to her, I would I would do almost anything. She was a big part of my life, and although she's been gone from this planet now over 30 years, her influence continues.
Well, I can see how perhaps her guidance and her leadership have shaped you, but also I can see that over your life you've gone through a lot of different things and you've had amazing leadership opportunities yourself. Tell me a little bit about how that has led to the Leading for Life plan.
So Leading for Life really as a framework is grown out of an organization that was created back in 1980 at the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School. And it was really founded by corporate executives who, at the height of affirmative action, took some extraordinary steps to actually find young people who they believed had the potential to go to an Ivy League institution like Penn and actually get into the institution and actually graduate. Well, it turns out that they were right, and they found those first cohort of 30, of which 50% of them applied to Wharton, and 50% of them got in. Of the 50% that got in, 100% of them graduated. Of the 50% that didn't get in, they went to other schools, but 100% of them graduated. And if you fast forward now to 2023, we've now had over 30,000 participants in over 27 universities around the world. And we still have a 100% graduation rate from college. And we're 44% African American, 38% Latino, 11% Native American, 4% Caucasian, 3% Asian. And that number has grown and fluctuated, and we are still almost equal male female. So we defy a lot of the myths that are out there about who learns and who can learn and where they come from, because a significant number, about 40% of our cohorts, no matter which program they're in, are on some form of scholarship, meaning that their economic benefit is low. And they are struggling and trying to keep up with the soaring cost of not only learning, but also, of course, higher ed and beyond. So we count ourselves fortunate, but the pivot to Leading for Life is now we're moving from a young organization. So when you read what you read in the intro has been our mission for the last 40 years, but we've
Mhm.
changed our mission, and we'll be announcing that change publicly in April of next year, when we officially become the Leading for Life enterprise. and the
That's exciting. That's
and
exciting. Well, I mean, it's an incredible legacy, and it's been a incredibly transformational organization to date. And broadening that scope and moving it on to the next phase is going to be very, very important and incredibly interesting as well. But I mean, tell me a little bit when you say that the company or the group focuses on leadership. What kinds of things does it do besides obviously just getting individuals, I guess, a footing into higher education?
well, fundamentally, leadership, education, and development was our former what we were known by for so many years. So leadership was a part of that. And in the residence experience that many of our scholars were involved in, we actually taught leadership. We taught what that means. So Drucker and many of the stalwarts of the industry that we call leadership, their narratives and books and all were resident in that. However, what we've discovered and what I've discovered as a scholar, and one of the things that I have been researching for the last 4 or 5 years in particular, is the idea that leadership needs to be reframed. And,
Hmm.
and we are now in the process of reframing that word. That word in our lexicon has a number of different meanings. If you ask one person, you'll get one meaning. If you ask another person, you'll get something different. But what's more important than talking about it is, well, how do you do it? Like, what will you see when you talk about someone who's a quote unquote leader,
Mm.
regardless of their station or position or situation? And what we've come to look at in terms of discovery, and we want to make this part of our narrative as part of Leading for Life's pivot, is that leadership is actually positive influence with a moral center.
Mm.
And we think that the word moral is one of those words that people will, when on its surface, think that it's about judgment. What it's really about is humanity. What it's really about is the caring for each other. And I've never met someone who I called a leader who didn't have a high regard for other people, who didn't care about people, who didn't have a high degree of emotional intelligence, or at
Hmm.
least a great self awareness, or people who had good integrity. They were about the truth. Uh,
Hmm.
and the truth is not disputable when it's based on facts. And so those kinds of attributes are what not only we want to share with young people, but because now Leading for Life will be a multi-generational learning organization, we think that that opportunity to embed that kind of thinking is appropriate at this season for society, for not only in America but around the world.
Well, it's been an interesting time for leaders. I feel that leaders are having a moment. You, as a former president of a university, may have seen, and I'm certainly you've probably even been counseled on all of the struggles of the various presidents of some of our leading institutions. What would be your counsel for them?
Well, first of all, I think that if we just look at some of the responses that they had regarding the anti-Semitic behavior of
Yeah,
students, I think that the first and most important thing is that any president knows you can never condone bad behavior.
right.
Now, protest is not bad behavior, but what is bad behavior is what happened to people in Israel who were killed brutally for no reason. And you must denounce those kind of things. So my
Hmm.
counsel would first be to them, tell the truth about what really happened.
Yeah.
Second thing I would say to them is that if protests are in the guidelines of code of conduct, that's one thing. And if they're not, then you need to enforce that. That's really not part of who we are, which is actually the third thing, which is to be clear publicly about that their views don't necessarily represent those of the university.
Right.
So I think, I had a crisis as a university president, several. I
Hmm.
had, first of all, two hurricanes do about $6 million worth of damage to our
Oh,
campus and
yeah.
almost killed several people. In addition to that, I had two shootings during the time I was a university president. And those kinds of things bring out the worst in people's perspective about what is happening on collegiate campuses today. Uh,
Mm.
and I think that in some cases, university presidents have to be really clear about what they say in public and what they mandate on their campus.
Yeah.
People knew that I was actually the first campus to evacuate in the state of Florida, and I had someone call me, actually someone in our trustee leadership, and say to me, "How could you embarrass us by being the first university to evacuate the campus?" And because nobody else is evacuating, because you're not from Florida, you don't know anything about hurricanes, you couldn't have a clue.
Mm,
And I said, "Well, what I do know is 71% of our kids are from low income households. What I
mm,
do know is Saturdays and Sundays are the times when parents can come and get their kids and still not miss work. What I
yeah.
do know is that their safety and security is the most important thing. And therefore, I made the decision. Now,
Yeah.
that decision ended up being the best decision because within 24 hours after that, every university in Florida was evacuating.
You know, Larry, if you keep speaking like this, they're gonna have to hire you to run University of Pennsylvania.
Well, I know the dean there very well of the work school. I think she would be the next candidate I'd vote for.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I mean, let me kind of shift gears here. And I think you might have touched upon it because it probably stems from your family past. But I mean, you have clearly been a leader. You've created organizations where you've mentored and helped people really kind of fulfill their capabilities and really push themselves to the next level. Tell me really what drives that passion.
I, like many people, I guess, for a number of years, searched for my own why. Why do you do what you do? I'm an executive coach by
Hmm.
designation and certification, but there still was that quest to determine what my own personal why was. And I think when I came to it, it is clearly what drives me every day. Now, first of all, I would say that I'm a person of faith. So I believe very strongly in the fact that the world is not about me. I'm very clear that there is something greater than me and
Hmm.
something that will take me to places that I've never been because of my faith. The second thing, though, is that my why was became very clear, and that therefore I could define any work that I would do on the basis of that why. So my why is pretty clear. It is that I believe that I'm on this planet to try to help anybody that I can become a better version of themselves and at the same time become a better version of me.
Mm,
If I can do those two things, then every day when my feet hit the floor and I'm blessed to have breath in my body, I get a chance to do that. And if I get a chance to do that every day and I can make some headway, even though some days I feel like I'm going backwards, I gotta keep moving in that direction.
yeah.
And my passion is really around that. It's not about me anymore. I've had my 15 minutes of fame, so to speak. I've been able to do things I never dreamed about doing. Um, and therefore, this rest of my life has to be all about others and not about me.
Yeah.
And that drives my passion every day.
Well, Larry, I mean, you already alluded to the fact that the organization is going to be launching a new brand next year. I imagine that's going to be connected to maybe an expanded or amplified offering, which is really exciting for the organization. But in general, when you look into 2024, 2024 is a year a year that will need a lot of good leadership. It's an election year, it's an Olympic year.
Uh,
What do you see on the near future for all of us?
Well, I pray for a world that is much more, that is kinder, that is more focused on trying to be better for each other, trying to get a generation who has experienced enormous change. The things that my children and my grandchildren are seeing are things I would have never imagined that young people could or would see. To suggest that I even understand everything that has affected them in terms of the way it's affected them would be naive. But here's what
Mm,
I do know. I do know that knowledge and wisdom, um, are most powerful when they're put into practice. For people who call themselves leaders, want to be leaders of our country, want to be leaders of organizations, want to get people to move to a place where the economic conditions improve for not only the enterprise, but also for everybody who works with the enterprise, the shareholders, anyone in business or nonprofits or any organization. Being kinder, being more understanding of people, having a
Mhm.
deal of empathy, is something that I think we can use more of. I hope that we can see situations where that's taking place. I hope people will once again return to their roots. I heard a very interesting story just this morning about a new book that just came out called "Some People Must Be Killed,"
Mm.
and it's really about the regime um, of the Philippines and how drug addicts were deemed expendable, not the drug cartels, but the drug addicts.
Mm.
That message was sold so hard that people actually felt comfortable saying, I'm a good person, but these people have to die. And
Right.
when you think about the power of words, I tell people all the time, words matter. What you say matters. Um, we must be careful with our speech. Our
Yeah.
young people need to understand that civility has to be a part of the social media craze.
Yeah.
That we must be kinder on those platforms where you think you are invisible, which in psychology, which I'm a psychologist, we call that disinhibition,
Mm.
ignoring the realities on the basis of just because that's what we've always known, and therefore there's no realities that are acceptable. I think that we have to do those kinds of things in 24. I'm really excited about what's happening in the economy right now. I'm excited about the fact that, while interest rates are still higher than we'd like, I bought my first home and interest rates were 13%. So my relative comparison to today when they're 4.5%, I want people to really pay attention to the facts that the economy is growing, that GDP is growing, that unemployment is lower.
Mm.
Uh, those are not things that happen by accident. It takes a lot of policy and practice and understanding of those things to make them real. So when I hear people talking about a recession, I'm not looking for a recession in 2024. I'm actually looking for more prosperity and for people to get a better footing. That helps organizations like us because it means people will want to invest in the future. And it helps organizations that are really trying to grow and develop new companies that are emerging,
Yeah.
which I love to see. So I'm looking forward to 24, not backward.
I know, civility and prosperity. Let's go for that. I'll be happy if we can make that happen. Larry, it's been wonderful talking with you. If someone wanted to learn more about leading for life, where's the best place to go?
www.leadprogram.org.
Excellent. Well, we've been speaking with Larry Drake. He is the president and chief executive officer of Leading for Life. Been talking about leadership today. We've been talking about the evolution of one of the great organizations, Lead, really started in the 1980s and really helped a lot of leaders get their footing and get into some of the top universities and really help shape our society. And we're talking to Larry today about how that's going to shift and move to the next phase of its development. Also, some of the key characteristics that we need to see in society. I mean, Larry highlighted it: kindness, humility, civility. All of these things are really critical for the leaders of the future and for the leaders of today. Larry, thanks so much for being on the show today, and we look forward to having you back.
Thank you. Thanks so much.